do see and what we remember. And there's good evidence from recent social psychological research that desires that we're trying to fulfill, goals that we have, influence what we attend to and what we remember. So our cognitive processing of the environment is not objective. It is very much subjective in relation to what is on our mind. As applied to stereotypes and prejudice, what happens is that our expectations about stereotypes lead us to pay attention to information that supports the stereotypes and to remember information that supports the stereotypes and to ignore and forget information that would invalidate the stereotypes. So we basically are going around the world as biased information processors, and we selectively attend to and remember information that is consistent with our beliefs and our stereotypes, and we ignore or forget information that would go against our stereotypes. If we ignore it, then it's basically impossible for that information to affect us and get us to reduce our stereotypes. So I want to tell you about several different kinds of memory biases that have been identified and show you empirical evidence for them, demonstrating that our expectations and our stereotypes affect how we process information and how we extract stereotype-supporting information from the world, even when it's not necessarily there. To talk about these biases, we need a very rudimentary model of memory that would surely offend any memory researcher because it's such an overgeneralization of how memory works. But to look at these memory biases having to do with stereotypes, you need to have some sort of common definitions. So when we have some item that we would like to remember, the first thing that we need to do is to grab that item out of the world and put it into our memory. So the first stage of taking something from the environment and remembering it is to encode it, to basically put it in storage in our memory. At some point later, when we would like to extract that piece of information from our memory to use it in our online thinking and doing, we then later need to retrieve it or recall it and sort of pull it out of our memory to be able to use it. So, social psychological research on stereotypes has shown, as I'll show you now, that stereotypes bias what we encode into memory in the first place, and also bias what we recall, what we pull out of memory later. And so both at the encoding stage and at the recall stage, our memory is biased by our stereotypes. And these two kinds of biases make it difficult for us to get over our stereotypes. So let me first tell you about an encoding bias, which is the way that a stereotype biases how we encode or put information in memory in the first place. In the study of an encoding bias, subjects are told that they're going to be given 50 descriptions of behaviors, one at a time. And each description is supposed to correspond to one person in a particular group. The manipulation here is that before seeing the descriptions of behaviors, half the subjects are told that the group that they're going to learn more about is known to be extremely friendly. The other half of subjects are told that this group is known to be extremely intelligent. So you're forewarned about, have some expectation, you're basically fed a stereotype about the group. And now that you've been fed the stereotype, you're going to be exposed to 50 descriptions of behaviors. I'll tell you how the behaviors were broken down in terms of type, but it's important to note that everybody saw the same behaviors. All that differed was what you were led to believe about the characteristics of the group. Were they extremely friendly or extremely intelligent? So of the 50 behaviors, 17 were friendly behaviors, 17 were intelligent behaviors, 3 of the behaviors were unfriendly, 3 were unintelligent, and the final 10 behaviors had nothing to do with intelligence or friendliness. So the statements are designed so that you have totally identical information about how friendly and how intelligent these individuals are. It's totally the same. 17 good, 3 bad for both friendly and intelligent. All that varies is whether you were led to expect that these people are friendly or you're led to expect that they're intelligent. The dependent variable is subjects are asked to recall as many of the traits associated with this group as you can. Just say them out loud. What they found was subjects who were warned that members of this group were friendly tended to remember all the friendly characteristics and forget, not report, the characteristics having to do with intelligence. But the subjects who were forewarned that members of the group were intelligent tended to remember the intelligence characteristics and forget, ignore the friendly ones. Objectively, it's the same. As far as you know, they're equally friendly and intelligent. But our expectation, a stereotype that we're fed, leading us to expect something, determines what we actually encode into our memory. We have the stereotype before we encounter the information, so that suggests an encoding bias, because we bias what we actually store in our memory, only storing the information that is consistent with our stereotypes, and basically ignoring, filtering out the information that's inconsistent. So even though objectively we should say, they're intelligent and friendly, I have no idea which is which, instead we are encoding of the information as biased by what we expect. So our stereotype is affirmed, it's supported, even though it shouldn't be. So that study shows us that our expectations for warning about something, a stereotype before we're exposed to the information, biases what we encode into our memory. I want to now tell you about a study that shows that even after we've encoded it, even after we have put the information in our memory, stereotypes can bias what we extract. They can bias what we recall. So whereas the first study was an encoding bias, this next study will show that there's also a recall bias supporting our stereotypes. In the study, if it's a recall bias, not an encoding bias, you have to first show subjects the information, and then after they've encoded it, feed them the stereotype to see what they then extract from their memory and their recall. So first we give them the information, and then we feed them the stereotype. That's how we separate encoding from recall. So in the study of a recall bias, subjects are first given a woman's biography to read, and a week later, they come back to the lab to participate in part 2 of the study. So in the first part, all they do is read the biography of this one woman, and then they come back to the lab a week later. Here is where the manipulation happens. Subjects are now told one additional piece of information about this woman with the biography they read a week earlier. One dependent variable having to do with what you were told the sexual orientation of the woman is. Half the subjects are told, by the way, I didn't mention last week, it wasn't written on the thing that you read, but that woman that you read about, read the biography of last week, is also a lesbian. The other half of subjects are told, I didn't tell you about the sexual orientation of the woman that you read about last week, but just to fill out that part of the story, she's heterosexual. The information is the same. Everybody read the same information the week before. All that you're now told is half the subjects are told she's a lesbian, half the subjects are told she's heterosexual. The information has not changed because they were exposed to it a week earlier. You see